Sarah, thank you for being part of this interview. We really, really appreciate it. And again, congratulations on gaining a deal with the Dragon's Den and specifically with Arlene Dickinson. We'd like to definitely get to know a little bit more about your career pathway and your entrepreneurial venture. Now that you know that you've got a deal, what are your next steps for Bluish?
After the pitch and because Arlene extended an offer, there is a process to go through. So we're working on that. But, bigger picture, when I did the pitch, I went in, with all my numbers and I was ready for that kind of questioning. But the pitch took an interesting turn because Arlene was, right there with me in terms of seeing the vision and, the story of why and how I started Bluish. That called into, kind of even more bigger picture questions, more than just how are you going to grow your business? What are you going to do next? There's a lot of visioning that can and is happening right now. So in terms of steps, we're following through on that typical process, but we're also asking ourselves a lot of questions. Because if we were to pivot, make Bluish really true to our story and what we're about, right now is the time to do it. I'd say in the past 2 years, we have done well with the products that we have, which are primarily tutus for adults, like for women and matching mommy and mini. But, as I mentioned in the pitch, we're more than that. So that's really, what we're working on right now. We're visioning that bigger picture and, where we want to take Bluish 5 years from now or 10 years from now.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, because in the episode, I think it was Arlene that had said that she loved the storytelling that was part of your venture, and in the sense of capitalism with heart and making money because of the good that you're doing. So it's great to hear that you and Arlene are starting to build on that and just moving forward to look towards 5 years from now.
Should I introduce the little guy that's making all the noise?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
Yeah, because in the episode, the little guy was still in your belly.
Yeah, and like magic, here he is.
Oh, what a cutie. Yeah.
So big now. Well, he was also, like, my belly was very big. I gave birth exactly 1 month after the pitch. And it was funny watching the pitch last night. I could not believe that he stayed in there for another month because it was so big already. Like I felt like I was wobbling in there at that point.
So wow!
1 more month to go.
And you definitely look like you had very comfortable shoes on. So
absolutely, exactly. Sorry, the producers. When we were working out the pitch, they wanted me to wear like something matching with summer, and I told them no, I can't. I totally cannot because I was pregnant at the time, and I was like, I usually wear it a certain way, and I'm like, I can't even wear those shoes anymore, and I don't really fit in our tutu. So anyway, that's a side story.
Yeah. So with the funding and the deal that you received, so what do you plan to use the funding toward? So you had kind of intimated that with August being born, you may not be able to handle all of the tasks and the projects that are needed to launch the venture.
So yeah, with August, I think it's just a reality with all parents, whether you're a mom or a father, that having a newborn at home is just going to take away, some of your time and attention. And like for me, I feel, but aside from, having a newborn at home, because it's a phase, it's more about freeing my time to think about those bigger questions and to work on pursuing the vision that we have. So like working on the content side, like for example, the editorial that we prepared, to free up my time to put together or, make that content and be creative, I think is where I can add the most value to Bluish. We've actually already hired someone a few weeks ago. Well, between the pitch and when August was born, we brought someone on board to help us with just the day-to-day managing, fulfillment and taking care of customers, and she's great. So that is part of that plan to help free up my time so that I can pursue those, that vision and creating content and really more storytelling, because that's what we're about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that is the storytelling and the content development is what truly helps to build your venture in more than just a business, but rather as a platform to help moms move forward from the baby blues, like you indicated. So based on that, can you tell us where you got your inspiration from to start Bluish and the name itself?
Mm-hmm. My inspiration was really from like a personal need. Being a first-time mom, I was 29 at the time, and I graduated from AFM. I did that thing. I did the master's. I did my hours. I went through the firms, and then I was in industry. And the funny thing about motherhood is it puts a stop to everything, and it's quite abrupt. And because it was my first time, I was like a new mom, I had no idea what to expect. And you kind of hear and you see all these happy stories about being a new mom and, really enjoying having a newborn and all these pretty pictures. And I could not have imagined anything other than that. I thought it was going to be great. I had experienced a lot of success in my professional career at that point, and I thought, okay, well, this is another challenge. I'm gonna get through this the same way. But no, it was completely different. It was hard. It was so hard, and it was hard in that I felt like I had no idea what to do, and the recovery was awful. I could not imagine that recovery would be that hard, because with Summer I had an amazing pregnancy. Like I had no sickness, and I felt pretty much myself. I did not feel heavy, and I worked. I was in the firm till pretty late stage in my pregnancy, and it was great. I thought, okay, I'm ready to have this baby and move on. But after having her, I felt like, oh gosh, I can't move on. Like I didn't know what to do, and I just felt like I was in a vicious cycle of struggles, and every day just flew by so quickly. I had no idea what was happening. Like I felt like I was losing control. So, 6 months into a new motherhood at that point, Summer was 6 months, and she could sit, and she was, no longer a newborn. I had a bit more time on my hands, and I felt, well, you know what? Like, what really made it easier, and what cheered me up when I found myself in that vicious cycle was just, those simple things that broke that cycle and kind of took me out of that rut for a little bit, even if it was just momentary. So, dressing her up and matching with her, that was one of the things that just brought that simple kind of joy and broke that cycle. So I thought, well, maybe I'm not alone. And so just based on a very simple thought like that, I thought, okay, well, why don't I do this? It'll be a mat leave project. We'll see where it goes. And the other thing was, when I went into developing the product, when I had looked for tutus for myself and her, I didn't like what I found. Tutus for kids they're either poofy, which is great, that's cute, but then the tool on that to create that poofiness is often very rough. So I didn't like that. But then when you go, the other end of the spectrum, which is soft tulle, it kind of just sits there. It's not poofy anymore. And I didn't want that for her. Like, I wanted it to be cute, but I wanted it to be soft. So that's exactly what our children's tutus are like. They're extremely soft, but they're also very poofy. So that's how I got the idea for that. And also for myself. Postpartum, I thought I would, again, in my mind, recover in a certain way and at a certain pace. But it didn't turn out like that. So I was like, 6 different sizes in 3 months. So I felt, okay, well, if I were to get something for myself or a new mother to get something for herself, it can't have a zipper closure because it's just so uncomfortable. And you have no idea what size you're going to be in a week from now. So completely not practical. So our adult tutus or women's tulle skirts have an elastic waistband. But when we get into that, a lot of times when you look at tulle skirts that are in the market now, if they come with an elastic waistband, it's usually like a lower grade, like you're looking at a costume. Like you can even get a tutu from Party City. But obviously that's not, what we're looking for here. So I combine kind of a bridal quality kind of tulle and make of a tulle skirt, but with an elastic waistband. So that was, in my mind, the best of both worlds. And then I created that product. So that combination of a tulle skirt that works with mom, that looks good, that's comfortable, and then with the mini version, that's great for your baby.
I don't know of any woman or little girl that would say no to a tutu. So I would love to get a tutu, and I have been on the Bluish website, and will probably purchase one for my own Christmas gift. Yeah, so I love hearing the process that you went through in terms of just what spurred you to create the tutus and the little mini tutus in terms of matching for yourself and your daughter. As an aside, now that August is born, have you given any thought to maybe perhaps expanding your product line to include something that would be for boy persons?
Yeah, so that was the number one question that I got actually after having August. Friends and people who follow us on Instagram, they were excited about, what we currently do for our moms and girl moms. They're like, well, okay, now that you have had a boy, like, are you going to be inspired and, do something for our moms with boys? And yeah, I am inspired, but it might not be in the way that I think a lot of people have in their minds. It may not be the mom and a boy matching. But, what I've learned from this experience of having a boy rather than a girl this time is really how similar and how different that experience can be. Whether, the baby is a boy or a girl. From the mom's perspective, you kind of go through a similar roller coaster of emotions. And, there are different things that may spark that joy and kind of break that rut. But, there are so many ways to break that cycle, to bring that momentary happiness. During the pitch, actually, Lane Merrifield, he also resonated with our story from the perspective of being a dad. It got edited out of the final pitch that aired, but he also shared, from the perspective of a dad, you kind of don't know what to do because you kind of feel like you don't know how to help the new mom and the baby. You want to help, that you might be doing, helping with the feeding or the burping, but you really don't know how to help bring the mom out of those emotions. So all of that is to say, I think there are different ways to be true to our story, and it doesn't have to be with matching clothes or matching tutus.
Yeah, and just having that platform for moms and dads to tell their stories is, I think, empowering enough. So obviously, prior to starting Bluish, you had a very different career path than what you're doing now. How has your career path changed since having been an undergrad and graduate student of the School of Accounting and Finance?
Yeah, it's interesting. As I mentioned earlier, I did my undergrad in AFM and then I did my master's, and I spent 10 years in the industry. So I got my first job at KPMG, and I did consulting and I did financial reporting and auditing. And then I've moved to a small firm, which is where my husband's at now, MNP. I was there for a few years in internal audit and consulting. And then I did a stint after I had summer at a regulator's. And then I moved on to a real estate company. And that was really where I was before I decided to pursue something else. Sorry, can I get you to repeat the question again? I kind of lost my train of thought.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no problem. How has your career path changed? And I'll add an additional question to that, which might help lead into what you're naturally going to start to talk about anyways, is how do you think your education within the SAF has prepared you for your entrepreneurial venture?
Starting your own business, I think, especially something like Bluish, it's very different from my firm days or being in the corporate world, where a lot of it was bound by delivery and delivering per a specific set of expectations. So like in the firm, we have engagement letters and we have a certain way to conduct an audit and we have a certain way to do reporting. A lot of it is already like prescribed. Of course, there's room for creativity because how you manage your client, how you deal with them, and how you propose a solution. Obviously, there's a lot of variation there, but by and large, what you're expected to deliver is there. With Bluish, I found there is really absolutely no manual. There's no one to tell you what the expectations are, and no one to tell you when something is due. You can take years to do something. You can take days. It's really up to your own judgment and the pace that you want to go. And, aligning opportunities with your capabilities, that's a big part of starting and running your own business. But I think, when you're working against a job post or job description, that's often not in that, expectations. So that was a huge pivot for me. In terms of how my accounting background prepared me, I think it's, for me, financial literacy and the numbers, they come naturally. And I think a big part of it is, my training in accounting. I mean, I've spent 10 plus years auditing and, looking at numbers and also trying to simplify the complexity, like to cut through that complexity, right? Because if you think about doing an audit, there's obviously a lot of detail there. But how do you perform all the procedures, cut through all the detail, and then deliver a certain solution to the client? That takes a lot of skill and understanding in what you're dealing with. And in accounting, naturally, it's all about numbers. But, with Bluish, I found myself being able to apply those skills, like my understanding with financials, and then also being able to kind of pick out the story, and lead, whether it is clients or customers, to focus on what that story is. I think that storytelling theme is very consistent. So, being in accounting, it's prepared me in so many ways, from understanding of finances to storytelling to really even being able to speak, right? Like in accounting, we've had to speak a lot to clients, to people way higher up who know a lot more. and then as a consultant or an auditor, you have to go there and present your findings and tell them what they're not doing so well. It's incredibly intimidating. So all of that training, I feel, has also prepared me very well, in particular for this pitch, because it's obviously very intimidating to walk in there, and especially because Bluish has been so personal for me to stand in front of the dragons and then talk about the business. I think I drew a lot from my skills developed in the accounting world to stay, kind of calm and to stay coherent as much as I could. So that's how it's prepared me.
Excellent. Thank you. So obviously, in the amount of time that you've started your entrepreneurial journey, there must have been some significant highlights or moments of success that really stood out to you. What were some of those, obviously, in addition to pitching to the Dragon's Den?
Mm-hmm. I've been having a lot of flashbacks lately because, in anticipation of the pitch and last night. If I think back to, when we started, again, based on a very simple thought, right? And I thought, okay, well, the first thing I want to do is get it in front of people. And at the time, I was not very good at social media. I mean, I'm not very good at it right now, but at the time, I was completely new to social media. I didn't even have an Instagram account. So I thought, okay, I'm going to bring it in front of people in the way that I know how, which is in person. So we did a baby show. And when we were at the baby show, I guess some people noticed us. And one of those people was probably in charge of another baby show. So when we did our second baby show, someone contacted us and said, hey, we want to feature you on breakfast television. And we had literally just started. I did not even have a website at the time. So I was like, okay, that's great, right? So we kind of blindly did our second one, and we had already been on breakfast television, and people were trying to find us, so we had no website, so people couldn't find us. But when we were doing our second show, some people came up to us and said, hey, we tried to look for you, but we couldn't find you. And that really prompted us to, get on with that online presence. And then at the same time, we also met a few more people at that show. And one of those really important contacts was Pottery Barn Kids. So they connected with us because we were featured side by side on BT. And then when we did our second show, they also popped up there. So they came by to say hi. Incredibly nice team. We still stay in touch. And then they invited us to pop up in their store in Pottery Barn Kids in Yorkdale. And they were like, yeah, you can pretty much come whenever. You can stay for as long as you want. Like, it was amazing. Because, I was new to the scene, but I had never heard of any other shops being able to pop up in Pottery Barn Kids. And they were so friendly and supportive. Like, they gave us pretty much an 8x8 or a 10x10 space, like right in front of the store. At the front of the entrance. So it was amazing. They were so generous. So when I think back to highlights, it's really, examples like this where on my part, I just put one foot in front of the other, and I just, did what I knew and could at the time. And then just staying open-minded, and other very nice people, very kind people then reached out to me. So I think those are the highlights when I think back, meeting those people and being just so genuine. Yeah.
Yeah, and definitely building that network of just like-minded people, which is fantastic. Yeah. Those highlights, the highlights and the stories that you've told are definitely demonstrations of, makes me feel good to know that there's great people out there and that believe in products and storytelling, such as the stories that you're telling through Bluish. So bringing you back to the Dragon's Den, experience. How was it? How was your experience in preparing for the pitch, and but then also having your daughter Summer join you at that pitch? She's so cute.
When it came to her, there was really no preparing. Bringing her there was risky. You have no idea how a 5-year-old would decide to act. On the day, we made sure she was fed. We bought her a toy just before the pitch to keep her in a good mood. And, and she was herself when she was there. She was fantastic. In terms of myself, like how to prepare, when I first got the news, it was maybe a little bit more than a month, maybe 5 weeks or so before the pitch. Yeah. So I was very surprised. I really wasn't expecting it. And, all of a sudden it was like, well, how do we prepare? I was asking myself the same question. And I shared last night on our live that one of the first things that we did was clean up our numbers. Because even though both of us are accountants, after starting Bluish, I realized, the last thing I want to do is the book, really. So that's what we did. We cleaned up our numbers. We got help from a bookkeeper, actually, to help clean up those numbers, get our tax filing straight so that we could, calculate ratios from the actual numbers and be truthful and really be able to tell what is that genuine story here through numbers. Other than that, then we started asking ourselves, and I say we because even though this is completely my venture, my husband is a very important sounding board, and we're debating all the time, what Bluish is and should be, and my vision in 5 years or 10 years, because I do need that voice. You can't just talk to yourself all the time. Anyway, so we asked ourselves a lot of important questions, like exactly what I shared, like in 5 years, 10 years, what do I want to see? And what is true to how I feel about Bluish? Like, would I be comfortable in telling people, hey, this is what Bluish means, even if that would mean, more growth? But would that be true to what I believe in and what I'm comfortable in? So we did a lot of debate over that, and then at the end of it, we married, what I wanted Bluish to be within the numbers, and that's how really we formulated my pitch, and also all the responses to the questions that we expected the dragons to ask. One other thing that I did was I got a life coach to help me just put myself in the right mindset. Because it came as such a surprise and there wasn't a lot of time to prepare. I felt like I needed a very concentrated amount of thinking, and there was really no time for my mind to, to think thoughts that were unproductive or set me back or made things harder than they already were. And you have to remember, at the time I was 8 months pregnant when I got the news. So, my hormones and my emotions were all over the place. So I felt like, okay, no, I have to be really focused for the next few weeks. There's a lot to think through and to prepare here. So my life coach is actually, or business coach, is actually a classmate of mine. She's also from AFM. Yeah, we were from the same year as well. So also class of 08. And we actually worked at KPMG together when we first came out of school. So we go way back. And she started her own business and decided to leave and sell it, and she's now in coaching. Anyway, so I reached out to her, and then we, hit it off right away, and we got to coaching right away. And that really helped to put myself in that mindset.
Excellent. Yeah, that sounds like a fantastic journey. Seemed to have been like really quick journey. 5 weeks from knowing that you were going to be on Dragon's Den and actually pitching, and then a month after having August.
Yes, exactly.
So, would you encourage other entrepreneurs to seek opportunities like going and pitching to the Dragon's Den?
Yes, absolutely. Whether it's Dragon's Den or some other opportunity that forces, or I shouldn't say force, but pushes you and challenges you to really ask those questions, to challenge whether the status quo is where you want to go and if it's the right direction for your business. Any kind of opportunity that does that, I think, is so beneficial. Because as an entrepreneur, there's just so much to do and so little time in a day that it's hard to always see clearly, right? Like, there are so many blind spots. And if you're if you're working at it alone, on a lot of days, I'm just barely, I feel like, keeping my neck above the water, right? Like, I'm trying to keep afloat, like I'm operating, I'm fulfilling and marketing and talking to customers. It's really hard to be like, hey, I need to take a step back and ask these really hard questions. And then I would have a much better idea of where to take the business and be more strategic about everything, right? It's hard when you're alone and there's really no external force pushing you to do that. It's so easy to get into that slippery slope and just feel comfortable with the day-to-day, which is okay if that's, what you're looking to do. But if you want a more strategic direction in growing, or it may not necessarily be growing, but just taking your business in a certain direction, then you do need that separation from that day-to-day, and you do need that challenge. In my case, I thought it was great. The pitch was a definite kind of end to that process, but I have to be now accountable for what I'm saying to, everyone, all the dragons and everyone that will be watching.
That was actually my last question to you, so for you. But what I did want to ask is the narrative that you also presented at Dragon's Den, along with the gifts that you had provided to each dragon. The little narrative book that you provided is a beautiful, beautiful narrative. And certainly surprised. I was surprised as much as the dragons were surprised that you produced that yourself, which really helps to launch Bluish in more than the platform of product, but also the storytelling and that narrative, and providing a platform for moms and potentially dads too, to talk about sometimes the challenges of being new moms and being new dads.
Yeah, absolutely. Visuals are important in conveying any story, so you're very welcome to use that.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah. I don't want to take up any more of your time, because I know with a new baby and Christmas coming up, we really do appreciate, really do appreciate you taking the time to meet with us and to talk about your entrepreneurial journey. It's a fantastic story. So, and we're super proud and super happy to be helping you to tell that story.